with such narrow margins, will the losers be willing to accept the results? And if they do, they may, but will their bases? What happens next? Let's bring in Calvin Dark, co-founder of RC Communications, and campaign strategist Adam Weiss, CEO of AMW PR and a Republican strategist, and Cheri Jacobus, host of Politics with Cheri Jacobus on Patreon. Thank you all so much for being with us. Calvin, I want to start with you. How do you think this plays out? I was thinking about Dr. Oz. I want to shift to him for a minute because there was all this talk before the election that he wasn't going to concede and that Trump was going to get involved. And then he sent out this very nice, gracious statement saying, I concede and I want everyone to move on and be peaceful. Do you think we'll see that happen, Calvin, with some of these other candidates?
I mean, it should. It's the way elections should happen. But the problem is I think that concession is now being equated by some folks as weakness. And that's terribly unfortunate for our system. I think that Tim Ryan in Ohio gave a masterclass in conceding. Not only did he concede publicly, but he acknowledged that conceding was part of the democratic process. I wish all politicians of all parties would do that, but unfortunately, it's becoming a decreasing trend.
And Adam, I mean, both sides have questioned results in the past. That part of this isn't new. It's gone on forever, and there's been losses. And even go back to 2018, and you think about Stacey Abrams, she didn't concede. But at what point, Adam, do you think candidates cross the line?
Well, I think, when you have states that just can't get it right, I mean, it leaves them suspect to questioning. I mean, Nevada is a small state. I mean, you have casinos there, dealers in casinos that can count 5 decks of cards in 10 seconds. If you've ever sat at a casino table, why don't we hire a bunch of those casino, operators and guys that deal cards? I'm sure they'd get this done in 5 hours, right? So it does leave suspect because Nevada is a very union state. They're all a little bit of hanky-panky that goes on there because it's usually controlled by Democratic forces. So, but I think, Adam Weiss, if he loses, he's a very gracious guy. He was attorney general of the state. I think he'll concede, no problem there.
Wait, so you, Adam, really think you called it hanky-panky. I mean, you don't think this is more of all the evidence shows us this is just maybe a dated process that needs to change. But, I mean, you say hanky-panky, but there's really no evidence of anything bad going on here, is there, in terms of changing votes?
There's not at this point, but there's some suggestions in the past election cycles of these states. So, right now it's just waiting and waiting, which leaves them suspect to say, what's going on here? We elect prime ministers and presidents of large nations throughout the world. When Italy has their elections and Israel has their elections, 5 o'clock, and by 4 hours later, you know who the prime minister is.
Yeah, it is frustrating. Yeah, and I think everyone can agree. Obviously, the process needs to improve. Cheri, what do you think comes next for some of these MAGA candidates if they do end up losing, like a Kari Lake? Eventually, I mean, she can fight and fight and fight, but if she really did lose, that's going to be the outcome. What do you think people like her do next?
Well, I think the fact that these are looked at as Trump candidates and that he's being resoundingly castigated today, I think most people, even many Republicans, hope that this is the death knell of that type of MAGA Republicanism. It's going to take a long time to put the party back together. But this type of politics, and when we saw what happened with Nancy Pelosi's husband, and we see these people, making jokes about hammers, and you see these candidates saying some pretty stuff that you don't even want to repeat. And going this far as if there's somebody behind them egging them on, and that person has been Donald Trump. So if he, announces that he's running again and it falls flat, and the party starts coalescing around Ron DeSantis, and they've seen Donald Trump, say these things about Ron DeSantis. At some point, establishment Republicans, if there are any who are left, are going to say enough. And the type of rhetoric and the tactics, by people like Kari Lake and Lauren Boebert and these types of things, and Marjorie Taylor Greene, even though she won, it's not going to be accepted even by their own peers. And at some point, the electorate is just going to get sick of it as well.
Well,
People
Calvin,
just go too far.
I want to bring you in on this, Calvin, because Cheri makes a good point in terms of the rhetoric here. I mean, when Kari Lake calls the election officials imbeciles, I mean, even if she thinks that, I mean, but when we know behind the scenes they're getting threats and this is a volatile situation, I mean, isn't she just sort of playing with fire at this point?
She's doing more than playing with fire. She said for months that the election will be fair if she wins. That race is one that really scares me simply because they are taking their time to make sure that it's accurate and fair. And that actually works in Kari Lake's favor, because here's what I don't know what the result's going to be, but I do know that if Kari Lake wins, then it will be the fairest election they've ever had. If she doesn't win, it will be a hot mess. And we can't have that type of reaction to elections in our democracy. It's not healthy. And that scares me more than whoever's going to actually win this race for governor.
I mean, Adam, don't you think, I mean, what he just said, don't you think people see through it? I mean, if someone says, you know, this is only going to be fair if I win, I mean, can't anybody sort of see through that and think, wait a minute, that's, you know, that doesn't make sense?
I think her rhetoric based on that's a little off, because, you know, you should accept the fair election. The problem is, again, the election day, when I grew up, it's election day. Until we had Bush for a score in 2002, there was never such a thing as let's recount, let's wait a week, let's wait a few days. So I don't know where we got to the point where election day is not election day anymore. So that's one thing we have to change. We have to fix the system where you go, it's called election day. I mean, we've had these campaigns never end. We've had a year and a half of campaigning every day everybody knows how to go. You can't get it right on election day. Let's get with it, these states.
Yeah, and I think both sides can really agree that, you know, that the process can definitely be improved. I mean, we're in, you know, we're into the new times here with technology and everything. Calvin Dark, Adam Weiss, and Cheri Jacobus, thank you so much for coming on tonight. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
still to come, one of the most powerful